Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wowhead Weekly number 267. Last week we talked about 9.1 being here, and with that, more has been discovered as more quest lines have been explored. So, we're going to talk about all the 9.1 reveals today. Some really interesting lore things for anyone out there wanting to know more about the different storylines. We also got a really interesting Ian interview. Some of the questions in the interview were a little bit old, but still really cool stuff to note down from that. And yeah, we also got some other stuff in store, such as a Sylvanas novel, apparently, around the corner from us, which is really, really cool. Before we go into too much detail of anything, though, let me introduce myself. I'm Annie, or also known as Annie Fuchsia, and I'm a full time streamer on Twitch, playing mostly World of Warcraft and sometimes some other games too. My co host is the very lovely and hardworking Perculia.
Hey everyone, I'm Perk. Thank you for the intro. I run Wowhead, so I oversee all the news and guides and site feature production on all the versions of Wowhead. And it's nice to do this show once a week and do something in front of the camera instead of being behind the scenes. If you watched our intro, we were joined by Brightpaw. He'll probably be back very soon. He's under my desk. Um, but yeah, we have an interesting 9-1 follow up show, as well as some industry news like Jeff Kaplan leaving Daisy the Sloth charity met,
Oh,
and some interesting details that Ian revealed in this Chinese interview, like further details on the Mythic Plus in game score. And even some claims hinting at the 9-1 and TBC release being staggered. So, without further ado,
indeed.
let's jump into the news. And before we do the data mining, we'll highlight some of the industry stuff, like Jeff Kaplan leaving Blizzard Entertainment.
Yeah, indeed. I think we kind of touched this topic recently as well because, well, there's been a lot of people leaving Blizzard, and it does make us wonder: is this something that is truly happening more now, or is it because we're paying more attention to it? But regardless, Jeff Kaplan leaving Blizzard is a it's a pretty big deal. I mean, he's been at Blizzard for so long, and seeing a name like that go away feels kind of bad.
Yeah, for those of you not in the know, I mean, there are some people who probably know everything about him, but if you're a newer WoW player, you might not. He was in the past the game director on World of Warcraft before moving to cover Titan, and then that team eventually turned into Overwatch. And he was also responsible for some of the interesting quests in Stranglethorn Valley, like the Green Hills, the pages all around the area. That was sort of held up as an example of like what not to do with a quest. And yeah, I mean, a lot of Blizzard employees have been, um, really sad to see him go on social media, sharing stories about how he was a very motivational boss that would like frame conversations or critique in a way that would make you understand, like you would grow as a person. He wouldn't just be like, oh, you can't do it for this reason. He'd be like, well, have you thought about this angle? Like you improved as a
Mm-hmm.
person. So yeah, he had a huge legacy at Blizzard, and we wonder what he'll do next. And also, like you said, uh a lot of big name figures are going. Are people leaving more frequently, or are we just like hyper aware of it? And I think it's I feel like there are there were people that rose to fame before the age of social media and Twitch at Blizzard. So like people revered them because they were sort of like the only influencers or public names at a time when it was difficult to know people who worked on games.
Mm-hmm.
And like some of the older employees kind of rose to mythic status. So when they naturally leave, that's going to hit harder. Like even some of
Yeah.
like the old community managers like remembers like, oh, like Zarum and Bashiok, like you just remember those names even though there are still, blue posts happening. It's just the people in this pre-Twitch social media age um just sort of stand out as like the original Blizzard ambassadors. And I think that Jeff Kaplan leaving is one of those people, that's part of the WoW mythos. Um but
Mm-hmm.
I also do think there is something where people are leaving more due to maybe like all the conversations about wages that we've had in the last year, like differences of opinions on how the game is being developed, and just even the fact that we're all working remote, and it's easier to think about changing studios if you can just like work wherever, or there's a more flexible work policy if you're not tied down by location.
Mm-hmm. I definitely do think that it is possible for these big figures to somewhat take a stance, like you say, potentially. Obviously, we don't know, and the official message from Jeff Kaplan is very general. Starts with a "I'm leaving Blizzard Entertainment after 19 amazing years," and he talks very well about what he's done, and he also ends the sentence with a more, or ends the letter with a more general messages, which kind of resonates with what Perk was saying about how he was very encouraging people and pushing them to the limits. He says, "Never accept the world as it appears to be. Always there to see it for what it could be. I hope you do the same." So I think obviously a message like that, he knows he will get attention for leaving Blizzard, so he
Mm.
decides to put something that is just the general words of wisdom, I suppose, to not leave any kind of like bad remarks and anything. But who knows, like it could be him taking a stance because of these wage discussions. Maybe him realizing that also made him feel a bit bad about it. Maybe it's also simply because all of these other smaller studios now emerging, and a lot of ex Blizzard people going over there. Maybe he wants to find something over there. Maybe he wants to retire altogether. He has been at Blizzard for very, very long. We could be anything, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of people at Blizzard at the top, they've realized that uh, if they've been successful in a big studio environment, suddenly the appeal of having control over their own games, they've gotten the fame for
Yeah.
shipping a big game, could be more appealing. Like even Ben Brode with Hearthstone, like a lot of the original Hearthstone people are now at his own studio, Second Dinner. And
Mm,
like there's so many ex Blizzard
that's a good
studios,
detail.
and maybe
Mm-hmm.
at this point it's more appealing to just be your own boss as opposed to having to handle shareholders. Like we even saw that recently where
Yeah.
StarCraft like ceased updates, and then Frost Giant Studios, with a lot of former Blizzard RTS folks, was announced soon after. So maybe there's more to things than just the bottom line, or deadlines. I mean, that said, there's a lot of ex Blizzard studios out there, but we haven't really seen much from them yet.
No.
So
I think
it's
it's a lot
also
of
like, okay, yeah,
theorizing and planning potentially. We don't
yeah.
really know what kind of projects we are to expect from them, but I could imagine that for someone who has this experience and has all these crazy ideas as well, and might feel limited by these, whether it's budgets or whatever it could be due to shareholders and everything, doesn't feel as nice as going to a smaller company and potentially, being offered more flexibility and more power. Probably feels a lot more exciting.
Yeah, we've also seen in the case of Chris Metzen, he's been very open about his mental health and the anxieties that were caused by the failure of Titan, and needing Overwatch to be like a success
Oh
to
yeah.
make things right.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff Kaplan was involved with that project too. For the people that were like caught in the Titan crossfire, it might be very appealing to want to just be in control and not be part of that corporate environment that led to like that really stressful, painful decision, and then constantly feeling like you've been behind because you worked on a game that had to be canceled.
Yeah, no,
um
definitely. That's a
so
huge
yeah.
stress on your shoulders. I mean, obviously, if you're working hard on something, you want it to succeed, and not just for the company itself, but like for your own mentality too, your own sanity. You want to feel like you've worked hard on something for good reason, And I could imagine there being some stress as well from the company itself at some point. You know, like if we don't reach these numbers, uh, then we have to cancel even more projects or something. So it's probably always very
Yeah.
scary, especially for someone like Jeff Kaplan, who was pretty high up as well in the like in the pyramid of things of responsibility. So someone like him would probably take a lot of a big hit as well from things not working or things being a little bit shaky.
Yeah, I imagine like just the repercussions caused by Titan being canceled would have a big effect even, in the modern day when, management is talking about there being a lull in, the game release schedule. And it's like, oh, well, Titan could have been getting updates or releases around this point.
Yep.
Or just feeling like now you're working on a new game, but you're always behind schedule with that, or you want to try something in a genre, but like maybe like people felt burned by something similar tried in Titan, so they didn't want to do it again. So yeah, I do think that suddenly creative control is very appealing
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of people at the high end. And I think for the other Blizzard employees, not the Jeff Kaplan level famous employees, but the ones you see on Twitter being like, oh, I left after 5 years, or I'm going to another studio. I think, in California, I think it's because they are more affected by the wage cap, and realizing that, they could work for a place that pays more, or they could, commute remotely and live in a cheaper area with a different studio. So I think that Blizzard definitely has to react to those things, because Irvine is very expensive to live in if you're like a mid-level employee.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you're working from home, like there's not a lot to do there. Like it is purposely like in the middle of nowhere. Like you can't really,
So
like
you
it's
have to go for
very,
big
there's less.
travels if you're gonna do something.
Yeah, like there's not like a town, there's a mall, but there's not like a town center. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
it's like a very new city, so if you want like culture or history, it's not there. The school system is good, but obviously not everyone has kids. Everything is purposely spaced out.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not like, it's very commuting, so there's not a lot of people like walking. It's very far away from LA. So I just feel like a lot of people, if they're at a place in their life where Irvine was like inconvenience as opposed to a place they wanted to live, they may be thinking about uh still working in games, but living somewhere that is more agreeable to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's
So
a very interesting point as well to talk about the location because I think that has been a huge discussion now with COVID being so restricting in where you can be, and learning that you can work from home makes some people consider just moving away because once there's no like real reasons for lockdown and people have to actually go uh, to work, maybe they realize like I actually don't want to live here. I just felt forced to because my work was here, but maybe there's some opportunities elsewhere.
yeah, and I mean, I do think that it's important to have some work in person. Like we've seen that because you don't have systems being tested, that game development at the high end is slower.
For
But
sure.
there are other departments that seemed almost ahead of schedule, or some things that are better with Zoom than people wouldn't have thought. So I just think that Blizzard needs to um, adapt to that, or realize that for whatever reason, more people are looking elsewhere. Maybe their parents have health issues with COVID or something else, and they'd rather not live in an expensive area. Or
Mm-hmm.
I think just it's I think the pandemic has made everyone stressed and kind of like want to prioritize their self-care. And they're putting instead of putting up with things, they're focusing on what they want to do instead, because everyone's stress level is super high.
Yeah.
So if like if it's like, oh, I'm tolerating this and I just want to work in games, I can live anywhere, more people might want to jump ship at the mid level. Obviously, for someone like Jeff Kaplan or like Mike Morheim, or the creators of Frost Giant Studios, or all the people leaving for Dreamhaven, at the higher end, I think it's more of like a passion project.
Decision. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like even Omar Gonzalez, we covered him, I think, a few weeks ago, the person who sort of like invented the tech for Classic WoW. He's at Dreamhaven now, and obviously he loved Classic a lot if he, invented it. But you can imagine that, you know, he must have wanted more vision, creativity, collaboration if he left Blizzard soon after, even in spite of Blizzard going strong with continuing Classic.
Yeah, I think the situation with Omar was actually more shocking.
Yeah.
Obviously we don't know what happens behind the scenes, but having your, potentially seemingly a dream project actually happen, and then a year or two after that you decide to leave for a different studio, is it does make you ask questions like, why? Is it because classic now is taking a different direction? Is it
Yeah, some changes,
mm,
hashtag.
like, are we not happy about some changes? It's yeah, no, it's definitely interesting to point that out as well. And Jeff Kaplan was what was his latest project? It was mostly Overwatch, right?
Yeah, he was currently on Overwatch, and like he was, the face of the game. He
Mm-hmm.
was in the videos for game updates. He did that like Yule log Christmas stream
Yep.
sitting in front of the fire. So he was very hands-on, and I mean, of course there was speculation at, past BlizzCons that like Overwatch was moving too slow or they weren't adding enough to the
Mm-hmm.
game, and then like Overwatch 2 was also taking a while and had like a smaller than expected presence at BlizzCon, and it seems like they keep pushing things back or the voice actors haven't been hired to do things. So you don't know if there's creative differences there, or
Yeah.
maybe things were delayed because it was part of like a
Mm-hmm.
slow build transition to change management as well.
That's the thing too as well. So him being on the face of Overwatch and Overwatch 2 kind of being in the air but not really having any updates is kind of scary too, because maybe that means, hey, Overwatch 2 is not looking good right now. Maybe there's too many differences on the teams, or maybe there's too many limitations, and maybe there's too much focus on like quick grabs rather than long term things, long term goals for the games. Um, we don't know. It's
Yeah, I
all we
always
could do is
wonder
speculate.
if Blizzard's like slower process means that they might start a game when it like is really like capitalizing on a trend, but then if the process drags on, by the time the game is ready to be tested, the trend has moved on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Heroes of the Storm was being rebranded forever, and then like by the time it came out, we were kind of saturated with MOBAs.
Yep.
People wanted to play a different type of game that were casual. So, maybe there's something with Overwatch 2 where initially it's like, oh, let's reboot it so it's like a more modern version of Overwatch 1. And now, a few years later, it's like, oh, well, maybe some of that stuff is more antiquated or not exactly lining up with, market trends.
Mm-hmm.
Or like they're reacting to Valorant or some other, games that are similar in the genre. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's also very much on point. I think that's the kind of thing that's actually scary with gaming companies that introduce something too early, but then realize that they don't want to do it, but then they need to somehow put something together anyways. Um, I think that's a big difficulty with things going slow. From the date of announcing something to the date of actually getting something to show, to the date of actually having something to test, to the day of actually having something to show and play. Things change a lot in that time. And yeah, that's probably pretty nerve wracking for any team leaders actually to have to deal with.
yeah, I saw that meme going around where it's like the little like bracket and then the big bracket being different. And it was like game
Mm-hmm.
development timeline. And the little bracket was like, wow, working on games is so cool. And then like the later gigantic segment was like, how does any game get produced ever? Like, it's like,
Yeah.
it's like working at a game studio. At first, you're like, wow, so creative. Then you're like, oh my God, how does this all
Mm-hmm.
like actually become a
Mm-hmm.
thing?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, why don't we
Yeah, we
highlight some of the
sidetracked quite a bit there. Yeah.
yeah. So
Um,
why don't we some of the positive news and then
mhm,
the Ian interview and then some 9-1 stuff. So
yes,
I think we all got an email about this, but Daisy the Sloth goal has been reached. So you
yes.
can get Daisy now. Good job,
Hmm.
everyone.
For people who don't know, basically Blizzard kind of started a big charity goal as a fund in a way. The charity was for Doctors Without Borders, so charity fundraiser, and the goal was $1 million. I think at 500,000 we were given the first pet. Was it 500,000?
Yeah, the
Yes.
halfway point. That was
Yeah.
Bananas, the
Yeah.
trading card pet
Mm-hmm. So
that some people already had. But yeah.
yeah. So at $500,000, we all got a TCG pet, the one called Bananas, and here at 1 million, we got this brand new Daisy the sloth. I actually have a video of it here, so you can see how it looks like,
Yeah.
and it's basically Daisy the sloth on your back.
Yeah, and if you're wondering how to get her on your back, you need to do the command slash beckon. Because
And
otherwise she'll just sort of crawl on the floor.
yeah, it's a normal pet, right? And then she has the command to get on your back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she's very cute. There's actually we data mined the model in a bunch of colors, so I wonder if others will be used. But I don't think. I mean, they haven't reused, like Bright Paw or Mischief or any of the other ones. I think exactly. But it's just interesting to know that there was like Evil Daisy and like Zandalari, Blood Troll Daisy, and different variants of Daisy. Do you like this new system or the old system better? Because one pro I really saw for this system was you donate the money directly to the charity. It doesn't go through Blizzard, so if people are concerned that Blizzard was taking a cut of the proceeds for profit, or like Blizzard, because it went through Blizzard was then using it as like a tax break or something, nefarious. It
Oh.
seems better that this one went directly to Doctors Without Borders and skipped Blizzard.
Okay. I can see that point being made. I'm not so knowledgeable in the sort of company taxing things. If that does mean that Blizzard did indeed save on taxes, because that's pretty scummy. Uh, in general, I feel like a big company like that can't get away with taking a part of it. Like at least I feel like if I pay $10, then the $10 will go to charity, even if it goes through Blizzard. So that part is okay. Uh, but it's true that does mean that some kind of loopholes can be used for Blizzard to somewhat make a profit. So maybe in this way it's a bit more cleaner. And also it can be argued that in the past, the way that we had, for people who may not remember, you had a charity pet which is available for forever actually. But all the
Yeah.
purchases made before a certain date all goes to charity. Anything after that goes to Blizzard. Is that better or worse? I mean, that means that people who may have missed the period can still get the pet later on. Obviously, if they get it later on, that does mean that Blizzard is making profit out of it as well. So it's a bit of it's a difficult one to decide what is good and what is bad, because I don't like that the store it keeps growing, right? Like
Right.
we don't like how there's these indirect ways of the store to grow, whether it's the yearly charity pet being added. Like maybe they should stay unique and just never come back and just disappear.
Yeah, well, I think that's the case with the wording wasn't clear, but I took this to mean that you had to redeem Daisy through the store, but she wasn't going to like be on sale. It just was you had
No,
to redeem her
exactly.
before August. So I think I
Yeah.
like that better, how this
Mm-hmm.
way the store isn't growing.
Yes. So in that
I
sense, this system does
yeah.
make it better. Mm-hmm. Which reminds
Yeah.
me, I'm not sure if I redeemed mine.
Yeah. I also know for a while, like the program felt like it was getting a little stale. Like it was for a while, it was going to the Red Cross, and people were saying that like that charity was one where a lot of the like donations went to overhead and like maybe didn't have the greatest track record. So I think it's a good
Um.
thing that Blizzard is trying new things. Like it's just good to keep experimenting with how they run things.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. I do see the benefits
Yeah.
of having a system that kind of like just ends.
Yeah. I do have to say though, like looking at the actual donation page, as someone that has to, care about website placement and links, you have to, like, as I kept doing updates, you have to scroll a really long time to get to the donate now button. And it's not super big, and you can't see
Yeah.
the progress on the actual WoW page. And like when I want someone to click through on Wowhead to something, I have that button like right under the intro paragraph. And I definitely feel that a lot of people
Yeah, they could have coded
like
that differently.
yeah didn't know like where to donate, or they want to open the WoW article and be like, oh, I donate here and here's the bar showing how far it is, and like you didn't really get a sense of urgency or how far away something was
Mm-hmm.
on the website.
Mm-hmm.
So but yeah, that was the first time they did this, so hopefully it will get better in the future.
Yep. We have another interesting positive thing that we have seen. The Sylvanas novel has been announced and is available for pre purchase, which
Yeah,
was a nice
so
surprise.
I can't tell in the notes, did you want to show the cover on the screen because it's super
Mm-hmm.
pretty?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so Sylvanas is written by Christy Golden, who's written a lot of books for Blizzard before, and now is a full-time member of the Blizzard staff. And the audiobook will be narrated by the voice actor who plays Sylvanas, so people are really excited about that part of it.
Wait, this will
And
be as an audiobook as well, you mean?
yeah, available in November.
Mm, cool.
So yeah, we've got this really beautiful cover showing the version of Sylvanas as the Ranger General, and then her BFA version with the shattered Shadowland sky behind her. Uh, Interesting decision not to show her Shadowlands version, but I guess that's like not as iconic. Um, and the book, it seems, is going to cover uh, sort of filling in the backstory as she reflects on her life path and the choices that led her to the jailer's side.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then it seems that we're going to get some buildup as to why she helped the jailer capture Anduin. And it's going to explain things like her renewed purpose in founding the Forsaken, when she first saw the Maw, and what she thought was beyond the veil of death. And the last sentence in the blurb is Sylvanas Windrunner will, wait, but as the moment of victory draws near, Sylvanas Windrunner will make a choice that may ultimately come to define her, a choice that's hers alone to make. So I think that means it'll either be about her choice to turn Anduin because he was, always taunting her in the cinematics that she had no choice. Was she actually going to go ahead and do this? Or it will be something explaining something mysterious that happens in the Sanctum of Domination fight, because this book's coming out in November, and I
Mm-hmm.
think the raid's going to be before November. So I think this will be like,
Yeah, I would hope so.
yeah.
No, but it does sound exactly around the same time that it should be out and probably defeated. So it sounds like a fitting time for it to come out to start capturing potentially something story wise after the raid has kind of happened, maybe. Or could it be before the raid? No, it can't be, right?
I mean, I think it has to be before the raid. I could see like the raid is already done and this explains some things and maybe leads into the next patch, because
Okay, yeah, you mean like that.
we've seen
Mm-hmm.
like Jaina and Ashara, we fought them and they escaped. So like if Sylvanas escapes in some way, or if I don't know, like she intervenes and something dramatic happens and then she vanishes, I think that this novel could make more sense of that, and then be like, oh yeah, and then we'll see her again in 9-2, or it just will make more sense of things.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
um so what are you hoping to see this book? Like what would you find really interesting? Because like she's a very controversial character, and she's been like present in a lot of expansions. We don't actually spend much time with her because they want everything related to her to be the surprise.
Mm-hmm. Uh, honestly, I don't really know what to expect because, and what would I want to see? Like, I think it would be nice to hear and see what her thought process is with everything. I would like to see more connection with her sisters as well, to see how everything ties together. Um, I it's so hard to say what I want to see because I somehow want to see like, oh, I want her to express herself and we see how she was wrong with everything she did, but then it's like, do I want her to have a complete redemption arc like that as well? I'm not
Mm.
sure because she did go pretty far with what she's done. So I'm I'm not really sure what I would like to see. But I think having some kind of explanation about the jailer, and I think seeing how she reacts to the realization of the impact that the jailer must have had on her fate too, would be interesting to see if, if she already kind of figured it, or if it's a surprise for her, and how she will react based on that. I think could be interesting. What do you think?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So I'd like to see some more of the dots connected because they've been keeping Sylvanas mysterious to keep setting up these big reveals and twists with her that, she's not actually just the war chief. She has shadow magic and she, blasted Sourfang, or, she didn't like the Forsaken. She was working for the jailer. Like there's always one more twist with her.
Mm-hmm.
And
Like
I
she
just
has
want to
some kind of
see,
power that's indescribable in a way.
yeah, and I just want to see how it's all pieced together. It's like Blizzard has been deliberately hiding things from us,
Mm-hmm.
and it's. I think that's a narrative trick that if you use it too much, it gets kind of boring, or you feel like you can't trust anything. As like the boy that cried wolf, and like sometimes
Yeah.
you want to like immerse yourself in a story and be like, are they misleading me? Like, did Sylvanas actually see, you know, hell, or was it an illusion of hell? Like, you don't want to be second guessing everything related to Sylvanas. Like, you don't really get immersed if you think that it's just like an elaborate trick to like misdirection.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to see like more continuity in her timeline. Like I think it
Mm-hmm.
would be interesting to see how much she was involved in Wrathgate because, originally it seemed like she wasn't that involved. And then there was that one random interview that was like, oh yeah, she was involved. And you're like, okay, well, what did she do?
Yeah.
So, or it's like, if she seemed really into the Forsaken, at what point did she view them as pawns and not care about them?
Mm-hmm.
Or like I too would like to know what's up with her sisters, because we didn't see any of that in game, just that one comic. So like, why did she change her mind and spare them? And I just there is a lot of leaps that kind of happen, and also like what you said, when will she realize that the jailer was involved in the creation, turning Arthas into the Lich King, which then
Mm-hmm.
brought the suffering upon herself.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there is a lot of reveals that they've been creating more mystery surrounding her, and I just want to have like an interesting character study. I know that like she's not. That doesn't mean that I need to like her as a character. Um, like she's not a friendly character, but I just want it to just be like a cohesive, interesting
Mm-hmm.
character study. Maybe she'll
Tie
be
the
like,
dots together.
yeah, like an anti-hero where like it'll be a compelling story, or like you understand why she went down this path. Just because right now it's sort of like, oh, Sylvanas will do something that is upsetting, but then her model will look sad, so like does she have something more planned? And I think there's the tension has been going on for a while, and we just
Mm-hmm.
need to finally understand the full story.
Mm-hmm.
And that also brings into concern like, why is this taking place in a book? So I hope that we can still see some of this in game, because I think it would be sad if like her resolution was covered only in a book.
That would be really bad because it's such a huge character at this point. I wonder if well, in relation to that, what does it mean with this novel coming out? Does that mean that we will see a lot more of her that they couldn't cover completely in a potential cinematic or maybe other types of content in the game? Because that would be really sad if the case is that we have this raid with her and then she kind of just disappears and then nothing more about her in game and then we have this book.
Yeah, or like it would be weird if the raid presented her in one light that was unflattering, and then like the book explains like more of her motivations. And if you didn't read the book, like the cinematic wouldn't have as much of an impact.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope they can strike the right balance. I think that we've had a lot of talks about this in the past, especially in BFA, where it felt like you had to keep up with like all the cinematics and the comics and like a bunch of transmedia stuff just to get the full
Keep up.
plot, and not
Yeah.
everyone has time for that, or like even the knowledge that Chronicles is a good groundwork for lore, but it's from the point of view of the Titans apparently, so it doesn't tell the full story. Like it's just hard to keep track of everything if you're like just a casual person that is like, oh, I like when Sorgera stabs things, with a sword, like big epic moment. How how
Yeah.
how do I make sense of this? So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I think that it's definitely nice to have more novels. I'm getting like flashback vibes to when Arthas was released around Ice Crown Citadel, and like that was a very well received book talking about like his childhood and then like narrating the events of Warcraft 3. Like I think that
Mm.
that was good.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't want important parts of the story to be stuck behind this novel.
Yeah.
And as we learned from the Shadows Rising book, like it's the author doesn't necessarily have full control. Like the author could be like, well, I think that this is stronger for a book, but Blizzard might say, well, the character has to go down this path. Like you don't get to decide like if Sylvanas does something or not, or like you don't get to decide if this character moment should be in game or a book. And I think a lot of people forget
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah.
So,
Because they're given a
if
plot that they
yeah.
have to work with, and then they make the story around it.
Yeah, and it's like very like strict apparently. It's not even like for example, I remember in the Shadows Rising, the author was told that they had to like show that when Anduin was upset there was like shadow magic coming out from his hand. Like it's very specific things that
Mm.
have to be added.
Mm-hmm.
Or at the time it's like, oh, have wording that like gives you Arthas parallels. And now it's like, oh, well, that made sense because they wanted to highlight, Anduin and Arthas,
Yeah.
being in control of the jailer.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, like I just hope the branding as well isn't cringe. Like I thought the whole branding marketing PR surrounding Teldrassil, especially the pop-up book where it's like haha genocide fiery tree in a children's book. I thought that was like pretty cringe, and
Wait,
I
what was that title?
there was a pop-up book highlighting places in Azeroth, and a lot of people were memeing on Twitter that the burning tree was like really hilarious, or like all the memes that Sylvanas is a war chief, she gets stuff done and burns people.
Mm.
Like it was just like a lot of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff, and I'm like, you can't like be tasteless and then try to do like serious prestige media at
Yeah.
the same time. That
Yeah.
doesn't really work.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of don't want that marketing trotted out again for Sylvanas being like girl power, hashtag feminist, see how she burned down the tree, JK. Like I don't want that marketing
Yeah,
as
yeah, yeah.
like tarnishing the book.
Mm-hmm.
That was a bad experiment, put it aside. Like
Mm-hmm.
don't bring that again. So
You know, you mentioning Arthas is also interesting because if the book does touch on Sylvanas, maybe her discovery of the jailer's involvement of things,
mm,
maybe that could in effect also then introduce Arthas to maybe soon appear in the story as we see it in the game as well. So maybe that book kind of also might help build up some hype, I suppose, for Arthas, because I think
yeah.
there's been so much stuff going on, just this sort of treading carefully around Arthas, but like, where is Arthas himself? I feel like talking about that in the book, if they do, could also be a great way to introduce that.
Yeah, I think it just would be nice to hear her actual thoughts because,
Mm-hmm.
where the storm was apparently from her point of view, but he didn't mention the jailer at all. It's like she was keeping something from us. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's now is finally the time to actually get her,
Mm-hmm.
like, get get her thoughts, get what she is thinking
Mm-hmm.
about, in a way that's true to the character.
Do we know exactly what she's done to Anduin? We don't really know, right?
Well, it was just that the cinematic ended on the cliffhanger where Sylvanas was trying to convince him,
Mm-hmm.
and he was basically, calling her out and saying that, you know, she never had a choice, so she wants
Mm-hmm.
everyone to be miserable,
Mm-hmm.
and she's not paying attention to the reality that the jailer is kind of crappy,
Mm-hmm.
and that he was like, are you going to go ahead with this, or are you going to be a coward, or like making
Yeah.
it seem like she already lost because she was
He's
the
not
one
gonna
that
give
picked
him.
this crummy situation.
Mm-hmm.
So it ended where she was holding the sword out, and I think
And
the
then.
assumption is
Mm-hmm.
that after that happened, like that he
Mm-hmm.
was changed after that, so she went ahead with that choice. But who knows, maybe this choice in the book could refer to something dramatic at the end of the
Yeah.
raid.
What if she
Maybe,
feels in something there? Maybe she didn't actually do that last step to transform
yeah,
him.
or like maybe we know the fight's gonna end where like the jailer is doing something, but maybe she, I don't know, maybe she stops the jailer, but his power explodes and there's all this like negative energy floating around the Shadowlands. Like maybe she wanted to destroy the jailer all along. We don't know. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe she would do something that's sort of heroic, but
Mm-hmm.
you know now there's toxic energy everywhere, so it creates more problems. So she keeps that, doing something
Mm-hmm.
heroic, but also negative balance. But yeah, I'm curious. I just want answers. I just don't want this to
Yeah.
end on a cliffhanger. I don't think that's possible if it's a full blown book, but I just finally want to get some answers um, on the character, because they've been purposely giving her
Keeping it
controversial
mysterious.
decisions
Mm-hmm.
and then keeping it mysterious to like further agitate people. And I just want to know like what just have it seem cohesive, as opposed to being like, oh, like when you're watching Game of Thrones, you're just like, this is a cool scene, but
Yeah.
something bad is going to happen because that's like the branding the show has, that's the expectations. I feel like it's that same way with Sylvanas. It's like, oh, when is Sylvanas going, when is she going to like kick a puppy and then have to get people riled up on social media? And I just
Mm-hmm.
want a cohesive story and not feel like
You keep waiting for that
every
moment.
every time you see her, like something like morale lowering will happen, be confused. Like I just
Mm-hmm.
want an interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
That's easy to follow. Like not like, oh well, when she went into the vision of the maw caused by the old gods, and she saw this, and then there was like one part of her soul here and there. Like I just want a very, keep it simple. Like I just want some epic story of
Mm-hmm.
her that people can read and understand. And if they don't read the book, they don't need like a Wikipedia entry to understand what happened to her.
Do you think there's any world that she may describe in the book the scenario of that moment when we saw her with Anduin that maybe just wasn't her? What if the jailer just walked in and she was about to leave him alone and he was like, no, like,
No, I think that could be something as well. I think that's a very valid point. Or
because she looks so
maybe
upset lately. I don't know.
there
Is it
was
just
also a
me?
deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was also a deal where like, like I'm thinking there's a deal because Anduin, it seemed, was able to, break control periodically in that cinematic. So he
Yes.
wasn't fully under the jailer's grasp. And it's like, did
Mm-hmm.
Sylvanas purposely keep it loose, so it's like this is going to be
Very good
really bad
point.
for you, but I won't like totally mind control you, so in the future you have a chance of breaking free if all goes well. You have to wonder
Mm-hmm.
about that, because keep in mind, if she is against the jailer in some form, she wouldn't be telling Anduin her true plan, in the jailer's prison. So,
Sure.
all
Mm-hmm.
those early cinematics, she could have been like lying or telling half truths even then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Indeed. I love how the sun is like keep changing in your room.
I know, it's so ridiculous. Like it was cloudy the whole time, and like I'm just at least I have a window so I can just open and close
Yeah.
it to like
It's
keep
not too bad.
balance.
It's just funny how sometimes it's light, sometimes it's dark. Um,
Yeah.
but
So,
yeah, Sylvanas
but yeah, I hope we get
Novel.
the previews of the novel.
Mm-hmm.
But why don't we move on to the surprise Ian China interview
Yeah.
that popped up over the weekend?
Mm-hmm. It popped up over the weekend, but the interview itself was apparently before the PTR started, so some of the questions are a bit outdated, so to speak. But there were still some really interesting points made that we thought was worth mentioning. Um, so that's why we wanted to just quickly cover that. One of the main interesting points that were talked about was Mythic Plus system, for example. We got a little bit more information on the Mythic Plus rating system, how we're going to have the rating system that a lot of people recognize as the Raider IO system, where you get more points. The higher keys you do, the faster you do them. And he also specifically mentioned that the rating system might have two separate leaderboards, so to speak. Maybe leaderboard is the wrong word, but two different scoring systems, one for tyrannical and one for fortified, which is also very interesting because if you watch or follow any Mythic Plus streamers,
Mm-hmm.
you will notice how they only push keys, so to speak, every second week. There's one push week and then there's one like let's do something else week because it's not worth it. But with the scoring system for both types of Mythic Plus, I think that could increase the interest to try and push on both sides of this. I think it's a very interesting
Yeah.
take. I'm guessing that it shows a lot in Blizzard stats on how much Mythic Plus people do, to the point where they found it, important enough to make separate ladders. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and this is also interesting because we did some early data mining and the score isn't on the PTR yet. But it wasn't obvious that there were going to be separate bonuses for tyrannical and fortified. So
Mm-hmm.
that was, I think, a surprising development to many people. And it also seems that they want this is a step to expand the Mythic Plus system, so there can be special rewards for pushing higher keys, maybe making it more like PvP brackets. And in order to do that, you need to actually set up like official in-game score and way to measure this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty interesting. It also kind of makes me wonder about the timing of 9.1 because we haven't really seen this system, and if they're trying different bonuses for tyrannical and fortified, that could be more work, more UI stuff. And that seems like it would be good to be tested and make sure it hits the right balance before 9.1 goes live.
Yep. I got distracted for a second as I got a cat on my table. Um, yeah. Was there anything else other than Mythic Plus that was interesting to mention from the interview?
Um, there was some affix tuning. They also might be revamping, upgrading gear with Valor. They're gonna tie the Mythic Plus score to things like upgrading gear with Valor or the standard Keystone Master achievements, where it'll say something like "Get your score to 2200." So maybe that means that the system will continue, because like back in the day, we data mined upgraded Valor ranks, but not all of them made it onto the live game. So I think that that's interesting because maybe for higher ones, maybe you'll need a Raider IO score, a Blizzard IO score to
Blizzard
you know.
IO. True.
I wonder what they were going to call it. So
And what does that mean for the future of Raider IO?
I mean, I still think that there's lots of stuff that they can do. They've been doing a lot with tournaments recently, or advice. My guess is that if there's these Blizzard scores that there'll be some sort of like API for people to actually pull information from them. So, their site could still do all the stats breakdown as to, what tanks are popular for certain weeks, like what
That's true. Yeah,
group
can still give
combinations
good
are best.
overviews. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they could focus on like building up that part of the site as opposed to having to do things like, focus on maintaining an add-on or other things. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I mean, it is a little weird, like when Blizzard takes a feature you're doing, like there's been similar things with Wowhead before, like there's something that's interesting, and then Blizzard puts it in the game, and then it's like, oh, this thing that was really high in demand on Wowhead is now less in demand. How do we, adapt around it? But
Mm-hmm.
I think that they'll do fine. Blizzard also relies on them for things like all the tournament brackets. Um, and those stats still need to be tracked. So I think that there'll definitely still be ways for them to succeed and have unique information.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, they have a really good stance in terms of a very popular website as well. So even if people don't need to use the add-on, they can still definitely use the website for all different other reasons. It's not like having an add-on makes them money. It's more that people tune into their website, which keeps them going. Because that would be a sad thing too, if these people have been working really hard on this and been able to create a whole company around it. And then because Blizzard decided that it's a good feature and adds it to the game, maybe that kind of like ends their role in this like little world, I guess you could say. I mean, it's not a bad thing. I think it's good when Blizzard does implement things that are good and popular. But sometimes it can feel a little bit of a like bummer for the people who have been working very hard on creating it themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the case for anything with Blizzard. Like, so many times
Mm-hmm.
an add-on does something useful, and then it's like, oh, well, we've added this functionality
Yep,
to the game. So I think that for
it
anyone,
happens.
like working on or for example, like WoW had a transmog set database, and then Blizzard made their own transmog collection tab, and then that part of the site wasn't as popular, but then with customization it was still good to have the model viewer to focus on that instead. So I think it's just important to like try to diversify whatever you're working on. So Blizzard does have a track record of being inspired by the community, so if something gets taken, um you still have something else that is interesting to draw the community in.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
So another interesting thing was that the 9.1 PTR and the TBC beta started at roughly the same time, and people were asking if that meant that both things would release at roughly the same time. And Blizzard said something to the effect that they don't think that's going to be the case. It's very unlikely that we're going to release both of them right at the same time. Players want to experience both. They're very different projects in terms of their testing needs. Um, you know, they said we don't want to punish one group in order to avoid a conflict for the other. Each game has some time and space to breathe on its own. So it seems like the testing had to start at the same time, but there's different amounts of stuff that has to be tested.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which do you
That's
think
probably
is going to
because,
come first?
yeah, I was just gonna say. So if you think about it, it would sound to me like TBC would come out first, right? Because there's less new things. It's more like just troubleshooting the things that do exist, um, such as the recent ray testing that we had, and there's less of a balancing demand in TBC compared to retail. So that means that a lot of time is saved there too. People aren't running the raids and like comparing the logs and asking for balancing of the different classes. People are kind of just accepting how it is as long as hopefully it's as close as possible to how it used to be. Whereas with 9.1, people have a lot more feedback. People want their own class to, if any other class is getting something new, then people want their own class to get something new too. If any class loses something, then people start asking, why aren't the other classes losing something? Or comparing Warcraft logs of what's happening on the betas, to then make other kind of conclusions like, hey, Blizzard, my spec sucks right now. Please do something about it.
Hmm.
I would assume that TBC would be out before 9.1. At least the pre-patch, of course. I think I would say the expansion as well, honestly. What do you think?
So I think that the May 18th date for the Burning Crusade transition default clone date that was data mined a few weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
I think that could be an interesting either date for the pre-patch or
Yeah, I do think so too. I think it
the
is a
date
pre-patch.
where they announce the pre-patch. It is a little weird. We don't know when the pre. I mean, that does seem really soon. We're in April,
Mm-hmm.
so it feels like that would be really soon. To have a pre-patch, but we need some heads up. But I think that we could get the pre-patch and then 9.1 and then Burning Crusade later on. There were a lot of controversial hashtag some changes that people were curious about, like how Arena would work or the drum situation. So maybe there are still other things to test, but I do think that they could also be doing an extended pre-patch to extend the life of Classic and also use it as a testing case for more changes. Having a level 60 capped classic servers where the endgame content is Naxxramas, but there are blood elves and Draenei. Like I definitely think that they could use it as an experiment to see if that's
True.
popular or if
Mm-hmm.
people like having the meta is shaken up or if it gets more people playing the game in this that situation did not exist in classic. Like in classic it was like okay we're now in BC Draenei blood elves like 70.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what they're going to do to stagger it more. I do think that they'd want the pre-patch to come in quarter 2 because earnings call you want stuff to happen every quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they've also been testing at a faster pace than classic as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think it's going to go pre-patch 9.1 Burning Crusade.
Okay, so you think it'll be pre-patch and then 9.1 and then TBC.
Yeah.
So in what months would that be? So do you believe May 18th is simply the pre-patch date?
I don't know. Like maybe May 18th is when they'll like give us a week's notice for the pre-patch. Like it's April 26th. Like May 18th is in like 2-3 weeks. Like that's really soon. Like we don't at this point if this was retail, we would already know when the pre-patch was hitting. They tend to give us, end of season notice. Um
True,
so
but maybe
yeah.
maybe it's more important on retail to do so because of
Well, the
more
cloning date
seasons.
is pretty important because
That's true. The
like
cloning date is.
and we still don't know how expensive it will be. Like they've talked about the character boost
Yep.
service.
Mm-hmm.
uh and I feel like people want to know the price before they uh commit to what they would roll or play or how to budget their game purchases for the
Mm-hmm.
summer. If it's there was that survey where they're asking people how much they would pay,
Mm-hmm.
and some people got a really cheap price and some people got a super expensive price.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel that I don't know if a boost is like $40, people might be like, whoa, like I need to I'm not gonna spend that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's also where we don't know anything about Burning Crusade yet. I feel like there's always sort of a buffer when they announce a game, and if they give it a really short notice, it might not have the proper like hype and marketing surrounding it in mainstream media. So I think they still want to get like TV ad rotation, media buys, stuff like that building up before it comes out. If it was sudden,
Hmm.
they wouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
any
Mm-hmm.
hype getting it into people's minds or getting like they always do things where like influencers that aren't always into WoW like get into WoW or like actresses or sports
Famous
players.
people, yeah. But do
Yeah,
you
so
think
I
the
feel like,
pre-patch is important enough to?
oh no, I meant like actual TBC.
Oh,
Like I
okay,
don't think
okay.
the pre-patch is enough, but like it would be weird to I don't know, announce Burning Crusade and be like, "Oh, it's coming in, a month." Like I feel like that would just be like really short.
So you mean because there's no announcement, then the expansion is probably still maybe at least
It's
two
still a
months
bit
away?
away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I definitely
So,
see your point with that. Mm-hmm.
yeah. But it would be nice to know what's going on, especially with that mount and like the deluxe edition
Yeah.
that no one seems to
No,
know.
it's true. Actually,
So,
there's a lot of
yeah.
unanswered questions and a lot of question marks in general about how they're going to go about with these things. That's actually a very good point, and I guess they all kind of need to be answered maybe before pre-patch, because if they are planning a deluxe edition, they probably want it announced properly with the
Mm,
pre-patch, right? Because they would want
right.
people to pre-purchase the expansion, and then for that they need to um, hype it up together with the
Right.
pre-patch release.
Yeah, like we
Um,
all know that the people that are, logging and doing Nax each week are, gonna play TBC. But if
mhm.
they want to reach that casual crowd again that, maybe got scared in phase two and quit, they need to do some marketing to bring them back.
Yep, no, it's true. Also, so recently we were all messaged about, or we were told about the transfer thing. I'm not sure if we talked
Yeah.
about it. So apparently, you need to. They're closing transfers temporarily after I think it was April 31st,
Yeah,
um,
April 30th
or
is
30th.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
Um
that kind of implies, and I think they said it's due to preparing for cloning, right?
Yeah, so they said that this was 5 days ago, and they said we expect character transfers to be closed for multiple weeks. We will
Multiple
let you
weeks.
know.
Ooh.
Yeah, we
Mm-hmm.
will let you know to reopen the service. Um, the actual snapshotting will occur after the closure. We will also announce that time at a later date. So it seems like the transfers need to stop, then the snapshotting needs to occur. Um, and then
And they can
the
continue playing.
moment of cloning also needs to occur. So there still seems to be a lot of steps, and it doesn't
Yeah.
seem that um, it doesn't seem like when the character transfers come back up, it like the snapshot automatically occurs. It seems like this will be a separate announcement.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah. So because they specifically said the snapshotting of the characters will occur after this closure. We will announce that time at a later date.
Mm-hmm.
And like they could have just been like, if they knew it, they could have just said, "Oh, we expect this to be closed for a few weeks, and now when it comes back up, it will be snapshotted." But they didn't say that. They made it seem like it was two different things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's all there. Just seems to be. I feel like the actual testing of the content is moving along, but the like administrative stuff has a lot of questions surrounding it still.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Um, But yeah, why don't we move into some of the data mining? Um, we have some non-lore stuff and then some interesting story beats to cover. So,
Mm-hmm.
kind of building upon the Ian interview, we've data mined a dungeon teleports that are uh, rewards for completing a mythic level 20 or higher. And people are really excited because it reminds them of the Mystic Pandaria ports.
Mm-hmm.
And I know like you were always a big fan of wanting more challenge mode rewards like the
Mm-hmm.
cool armor sets. So I think this is a good start.
Yeah, I think teleports are great because they're not game breaking in any way, and it's the cooldowns are so long that it's not something that will be annoying for you if a friend has it but you don't. Um,
Mm,
and it's like a nice little reminder that hey, I pushed this dungeon. I'm very proud and happy about my teleports from Mist of Pandaria, and
yeah.
I can imagine in the future expansions, being able to see those teleports is great. Be knowing that hey, I pushed those dungeons in Shadowlands. Um, I think it's an awesome, awesome little reward, and because like mounts and stuff are cool too, but a lot of times like mounts just end up being a recolor of something else, you know. So at the end of the day, usually the mount rewards aren't actually that cool anymore. Um, so getting teleports, I think, is better than a mount reward.
Yeah, I also think that mounts appeal to casual players to a certain extent, but
Yeah.
at a higher level, like you're about efficiency and just being able to get to the dungeon quickly, I think is, important and something that would be meaningful if you're at the higher end.
Oh, yeah, that's actually a good point. So the old challenge mode portals, they were just a set cooldown, you know, like I think it's 8 hours
Right.
or something. So
Mhm.
realistically, you would use it once a day. These ones are a bit special because they reset on completion of the dungeon. Um, and I think that's really cool and makes it very, what's the word?
Convenient.
Yeah, appealing is was the word I was looking for. But
Yeah.
yeah, very convenient, very appealing for Mythic Plus pushers because they probably sometimes jump between dungeons, and this way, as they complete the dungeons, they have the cooldowns again, and then they can keep, doing them.
Yeah. So it would be nice to see more, but I think that this is a good step and shows that Blizzard is serious. So
Apparently, I'm being
yeah,
told
let's
the
hope.
old ones also reset. I just don't remember.
Oh
All right,
no.
so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
Yeah.
it's not a change. In that case, that's always been a great system.
I mean, it's,
GG.
it's nice that it returned either way.
Oh yeah. I thought the resetting thing was new. Maybe it's not, but either way, I think
Yeah.
it's a really good thing for Mythic Plus pushers to strive for because it'll make their traveling around the different zones for the different dungeons more fun.
Yeah. So now they just need to sort out the esports situation. MDI they have finals. We've discussed in the past how being on YouTube is not as good for visibility, or that the prize pools are not great if you're starting out. So maybe by making Mythic Plus more interesting and visible in game, it can drive more attention to the system that way to
Mhm.
balance out the recent
Mhm.
hardships.
Mhm.
Um, so for our next topic, we have all the Sanctum of Domination raid tints. We've known for a while that the appearance of the Maw legendary armor is going to be reused for Sanctum of Domination in season 2 PvP with more tints.
Yep.
Um, and a lot of these are in the dressing room, so that's really cool. But I think the biggest talking point I've seen people going on about, and I agree with, is you know, we data mined all these beautiful sets with all these glowing tints, and people, love the Mal set, and they usually hate Mal sets. But when you put them into the raid and PvP, only the Mythic and Elite PvP tints get those glows. So the sets without their glows, especially the male ones, look kind of sad. That they just look different without these neon accents. So I've seen people
Mhm.
saying, could there be a way to like unlock the extra glows? Like for example, like a set that looks kind of like brown or silver would have like neon green or purple shoulder accents, but without that, it just looks like a boring brown set.
Yep.
So it'd be nice if that stuff could be added in some way. I think because yeah, it looks pretty different than what we first thought. I think like leather and plate aren't as affected, although the glowing stuff on plate is cool. But I think that mail is the kind of worst offender of things.
Mhm. So these are the
What are your
different
thoughts?
PvP sets.
Yeah.
I wait, let me just get this open here. I completely agree. I mean, I think having some of the glow sets and then going to non-glow, it feels very, what's the word? It's like you've been given candy, but then it's snatched away from you in a
Yeah.
way. Like you've seen the good version of it, but then like you get the bad version of it, and that feels bad.
Especially when for some armor types the glowy version was your legendary armor version. So you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, if I want the glowy appearance now for real, I have to do mythics, the mythic raid. Like now it's I thought this was in reach, and now it's out of reach.
Yeah. And I wonder if it's possible that maybe this isn't the final version of things.
I mean, I think that's true, but we did see this is how it worked out with Castle Nathria.
Yeah.
Um, and like it does seem to be an easier way for Blizzard to differentiate the sets as opposed to, I think I don't know, was it BFA or Legion where like the Mythic sets used to have like more details on it, and if art takes up a lot of budget, adding or removing glows is definitely faster than telling the artist to, create a deluxe version of the armor.
Yeah, no, that's actually true. It's like a quick way of making something look more shiny.
Yeah, but it's like, well, I don't know, just make it even more shiny, or I don't know, give people
Yeah.
wings, just do something else. But I don't know. I definitely feel like the male set is hurting without this.
Yep. No, I completely agree.
So for a final bit about the show, we were going to highlight some lore topics.
Yes.
We'll probably have
Time for
Novel on
story
the show
time.
again soon. But
Yeah.
there was a ton of Covenant chapters on the PTR that had each had their own kind of big set of reveals. So we wanted to highlight the big bits, and this was interesting because like we finally got some answers as opposed to just like speculating more. So it was kind of going back to what we were saying about Sylvanas earlier, like we're in the mood for these, satisfying payoff moments as opposed to like mysteries, and I think that these chapters wrapped up some interesting ends.
Mm-hmm.
So
The question is,
for
did
the
we put spoilers up?
yeah, I think it's good because it's 9-1, and yeah, let's put spoilers up.
Okay. Because, yeah, since the game isn't live yet, maybe people want to play through the stories themselves. These stories are what appears when going through quest lines, so
Mm-hmm.
if you haven't done them, maybe you are interested to go through them yourself. So let's have the spoiler tag up for these lore bits.
Yeah. So first, we'll start with a light one, which is Vosh and Kale are reunited.
Mm-hmm.
They work together with Illidan. We encountered them as villains in Burning Crusade for Tier 5, but they definitely have a checkered history, but uh, they have not always been evil, and as we've seen in Maldraxxus, we even work with Lady Vosh, and she's proud to be in her Naga form and helping players, and even makes a joke if you defeated her back in Burning Crusade. So
Mm-hmm.
they have reunited, and it's kind of funny because the uh, accuser is not the biggest fan of Lady Vosh. She says things like, the fact that you were not sent to us, Revendreth, before Maldraxxus was clearly an oversight. I must insist we get you a stone at once.
Mm-hmm.
It's like she's like this unruly toddler.
Yeah.
And then the accuser is like, keep an eye on the two of them. I am not convinced she is a good influence and may cause Kael'thas to regress into former practices.
Oh
So
no,
it's
not a good
yeah,
influence.
yeah. So it's fun to see them reuniting, and then I think dialogue on the screen, um,
Oh
where
yeah. Mm-hmm.
they have no idea Illidan is still alive, and they're sort of gossiping about him, like, ooh, like where did he get sent to? And apparently Kale was surprised to learn he's alive. So and then this was interesting. We know they worked together in Warcraft 3, but there wasn't a moment where they explicitly fought the Dreadlords. I mean, we assumed they were present in Outland, but the dialogue between them were showing on the screen kind of hints that they did fight them. I never imagined I would have to deal with Natrazim again. You were never
Yep.
the one I credited with good foresight. um, so it's like, well, what moment is this referring to, or is it just demons on Outland? But yeah, they seem funny. I'd like to see more of them. And of course, this brings the question of, is the whole band getting back together? Are we going to see Illidan
Yeah.
pop up? you know,
Got Illidan
because
here in my
everyone
background,
else,
so it's perfect. Yeah,
yeah,
like what does that mean? Are we gonna see Illidan? Where is he gonna be?
yeah, like, are we gonna, if we're seeing all the Warcraft 3 people, if we've got Kale, we've got Bosch,
Yeah, whole
we've
reunion.
yeah, we have Uther popping up, Draka, Thrall, everyone related to Arthas. Illidan fought Arthas, and with the reveals with the Dreadlords, which we'll be getting to shortly, Illidan might find this pretty interesting that the Dreadlords were involved in, undermining Legion,
Mm-hmm.
and were kind of infiltrating. They were behind Arthas, but also behind the Burning Legion as well. They were playing both sides. So the whole line about the betrayer still lives. It's like, oh, is that like, you know, and behind the door we have Illidan. Like, just,
Yeah,
I
it's like a
don't.
build up.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting if he came back, especially with the whole Dreadlord.
Yeah, no,
Um,
definitely. And he's had such a huge role in not only TBC, but, Legion as well and everything. And he had a really interesting story arc as well. So it would be nice to see him again and see where he fits with everything.
yeah, also going back to the critique of, or the Sylvanas book stuff we hope it avoids, there was a similar book called Illidan that covered um, a lot of details we didn't get to see in game, and that made him
Mm.
more sympathetic. And I feel like, yeah, he was the character on the Legion box art, but realistically, he was, stuck in a crystal for the first half of the expansion.
Yeah.
Um, and then, he pulls a planet towards us, and then he's off in this Titan prison,
Mm-hmm.
and we never, like, he never interacts with Malfurion or Tyrande.
Yeah.
And they were such a big part of his life. And I feel that that was kind of weird. Like, even with Maiev, I think the voice actor had I don't know if she was sick or like the voice had to be raspy. I think maybe she had a throat injury, but that sort of just stopped with them as well. Like, there wasn't any wrap up for the duo reunited. So I think that there is enough loose threads for Illidan's story to continue and maybe understand him more in game.
Mm-hmm.
You
Is it
obviously have to bring him
possible?
out at key moments, but I don't know. It could be nice to see him back.
Do you think it's possible for him to come back?
Well, there was that ominous foreshadowing in that interview where it's, I think someone asked if the star would be in the sky forever, and there was a response of like, oh, when the star vanishes, like there's gonna be big trouble on Azeroth, kind of hinting that it could, or they thought about what would happen. And I
Hmm.
think that if Shadowlands is all about like, the pantheon of death,
Mm-hmm.
and the Dreadlords are trying to, you know, infiltrate every aspect of the cosmos, and one aspect is the Titans, um, or maybe the Dreadlords like, tricked Sargeras into thinking that destruction was the only way, then I think that the story could suddenly be relevant again.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it'd also be very interesting if Tyrande is the Night Warrior now, and, is struggling with her powers, and, Illidan's whole path was taking on this, dark magic that nobody understood, and, trying to control it, and, being, physically affected by it. I think that it could be very interesting for them to meet up and have a discussion, maybe even more so than Legion.
Interesting. What would happen with Sargeras if that would happen?
I mean, like, maybe I don't know. Maybe the prison, like, maybe something happens to the prison. Like, maybe the jailer like rips the prison, or the dreadlord. The
Mm.
jailer
Mm-hmm.
with his cosmic power.
It could mean
Um,
so much then. Like it could shake
yeah, like,
everything up.
like, suddenly all the forces are at war again,
Mm-hmm.
or Sargeras realizes he's been tricked and he wants to fight the jailer, or the dreadlords gain power and they try to attack the Titan capsule. If the cosmic forces are blown wide open, more so than we thought before, sort of the like anything is kind of possible.
Mm-hmm.
You'd want to stagger it out though, because that could be like a lot at once if all the forces are
Yeah,
fighting each
because
other, and then it's
that
like, oh look, the old gods
sounds
have
like a
returned too.
huge thing. Yeah, exactly. Like it wouldn't just mean that Illidan is back. It would have so many other repercussions too.
Yeah. But it does seem that if the
Or
Dreadlords
consequences.
are trying to attack everything and the jailer is gaining power, it does seem like they would, want to go beyond the realm of death and start attacking all the forces again, if their plans are, doing so well in Shadowlands.
Mm-hmm.
That's the weird thing about the patch is like we're doing these things, but like we just keep losing, like we defeat Sergeant Athreus and he escapes, or
Yeah,
we
he's
help all the
back.
covenants, but then like they take all the seals from them, or you know, we free 3 people from Torghast, but then Anduin becomes a mini Lich King.
Yep. That's actually a
Or
good point. Everything is going down.
yeah.
Oh no.
So, or it's like, something happens in Oribos if the sky is all dark. So it just seems like, um, there are moments of positivity, but we're not doing very well. I don't think
No,
that's
we're actually
necessarily
not.
bad. I think that's an interesting story, but it does seem like if the jailer keeps gaining in power and winning, he could get more ambitious and start, trying to attack the other forces
Mm,
again. So
interesting. Yeah, no, that's actually a very good point. A lot of those storylines are kind of being really shaky right now. And I'm here
yeah,
sitting stating that, hey guys, we defeated Sergeant Athreus. Give us more anima now. But like, maybe this is the reason we're not getting anima buffs. And there's still
yeah.
some
It's like the
issues.
anima is actually decreasing. The anima,
Yeah.
the anima will decrease until the
And the
morale
real issue,
improves. Yeah,
this is why you defeating Sergeant Athreus had no effect on the anima consumption.
yeah. So we'll get to the Dreadlord quest in a second, but we wanted to highlight um Thrall's quest line first. Uh,
Yeah, got some
yeah.
thrall aspects.
Yeah, so Thrall has his new set of armor. He's wearing Doomhammer's armor again, which it's interesting. Like he was the war chief of the Horde, then he was the shaman, then he had the BFA model where he had a very simple look. He wanted to be away from politics. He was doubting himself. He didn't use Doomhammer, and now he's back wearing the armor of his mentor. So he's like regain some of his identity and responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So with this armor, he is now on a mission with Draka,
Yeah.
and it's interesting because they talk, and at first you're not sure if they know each other or not, or they keep hinting at things like, "You were part of the Frostwolf clan. Oh, I recognize that axe." But they're on this dangerous mission, so they're focusing on the task at hand, which I think is very much in character for them. How
Mm-hmm.
they're both warriors first.
Yeah, like there's a line here from
Yeah.
Draka. Focus on the mission. We will speak later.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting to see them fighting side by side because it's like they're physically in sync as well. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
another sort of family bond.
Mm-hmm.
They're celebrating like how they're both good fighters, and it's showing their teamwork.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for those characters and like the Orcus traditions, I think it's important to show that they have this like bonding experience, and it's not overly sentimental. Like it's in very much in character for both of them.
Mm-hmm.
That they sort of recognize each other, but don't fully mention it until the end. When
Mm-hmm.
we first did this quest, we were a little worried because it ended where Draka was just like, "Well fought, come, we will speak." And she calls Thrall by his original name. So it's like, she knows who he is, but then the dialogue stopped, and we're like, oh no, like, is this what's gonna happen? Do we have to
Is
wait,
that it?
till 9/2?
Yeah.
But then on the weekend, Blizzard hotfixed in the rest of the dialogue, and it's still very interesting. Like they actually have a face-to-face moment talking, and they recognize each other now. But it still feels very true to character. It's emotional, kind of hits parallels to Jaina and her mom, but it's uh it's different for them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I do think it's interesting how
Very warrior-like.
yeah, like Thrall and Jaina, they tried working together in Warcraft 3, and they had a lot of transformations and were out of the spotlight. And then Jaina had her big character moment in BFA, regaining family, and now Thrall is having a similar moment. So I think it's very interesting how they do have parallel paths.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at the dialogue, I thought it was very interesting how Thrall is still like really unsure of his identity, and Draka is,
Yeah.
a lesson then, not from mother to child, but from one similar soul to another. Remember who you were, but take pride in who you are. It brings me joy to see how far you have come, and I know you have much farther to go. Um, and I think this whole thing is very interesting because normally, like, you assume that someone that was a leader has all their shit together and like they're confident, but Thrall is sort of like, what happens after the happy ending? Like you're exploring all of his insecurities and failure after his big success, and I think that's really interesting for his character.
Mm-hmm. And this hesitation that he has as well when speaking to her.
Yeah, I wonder if this will really like improve his outlook on things because like he's never really had family. It was like self-made and always fighting to succeed on his own and then trying to unify people. And he lost his mentor, and he had to create his community. He didn't have his own. So I
Mm-hmm.
think to suddenly realize that he has family and other people are there for him and proud for him and giving him advice is,
Mm-hmm.
it's a new feeling for him. Like he doesn't have it was like really emotional in Outland when he realized, his tribe was still there, and now that he had a grandmother, and now he realizes that, he has a mother as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um I think we mentioned last time how in this new model of Thrall you can actually see the scars on his back, and
Oh yeah,
I feel
that's
like
true.
that was
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't just like, oh, let's make it true to form. I think that was a very deliberate decision to remind you that this character has undergone a lot of trauma and did not have a family, and he's not this one-dimensional badass war chief of the horde that has everything figured out. He's processing a lot of feelings about identity and shortcomings, and feeling like he has to succeed or else it's going to be a near death experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I do wish there was more to this. I hope it's coming. Like I do think that if Jaina got like 4 cutscenes describing meeting her mother, I think that a cutscene with Thrall and Draka would be cool.
Yeah, I
uh
think that would be cool indeed. I think that relationship is really interesting to see, and I think a cinematic would really capture that feeling because cinematics have become so good, especially with capturing facial expressions. So I would love to see that like in action happen through more than just these like text pieces and like in-game things. Um, the paragraph that we just showed on the screen here is when they actually have the talk, and
mhm.
this is from right before that we were kind of laughing at before. It's like Thrall saying, Draka, there's something you need to know. I am. And then that's when she's like, focus on the mission. We'll speak later.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
capturing that kind of moment in like moving pictures would be really cool, I think. Just, seeing the facial expressions of that special relationship that they have due to how they are as people, like true warriors.
Yeah, I think also building upon what you were saying, I was just going on about how it was fitting that Thrall finally got to fight alongside a member of his family,
Mm-hmm.
and if there was a cinematic showing them fighting, you could do some very like interesting
Mm.
choreography showing how they were
In
working
sync with
together or
each other.
protecting each other.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe fighting the same way, or their eyes could show more recognition. but like if there's a climactic moment where like you're just standing around and then it's like escort quest, you move forward, like Thrall moves forward a step and drop,
Yeah. Uh,
enough, and then a mob spawns and runs towards you. That feels very stilted. Like in sort of that moment in the pre-patch where Tyrande ambushes Sourfang with Malfurion.
Yeah. Oh, that was so
Like,
anticlimactic.
yeah, so much better as a cinematic. Like the
Mm-hmm.
in-game figures don't really work.
Yeah.
So I hope it'd be interesting to see more of this.
Mm-hmm. I think that would be really interesting to see. I think a lot of interesting things can be captured with facial expressions. It's like I keep saying facial expression, but it means so
Yeah.
much. You can see it in the cinematic with, like the recent one with Jaina and Anduin too. Like multiple of them. Just reading Jaina's, not Jaina, sorry, Sylvanas. Reading Sylvanas's facial expressions when she's making these decisions, and like her brain is like running loops on what she's supposed to do now because Anduin doesn't want to do this, is really interesting, and I think it says a lot about the characters.
Yeah, and Thrall just got a new model, so
Yeah, so it's fitting.
he'd be great. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like there is still a lot of unfinished business. Like the conversation ends with "I wish to know more of your life," all of it, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, he's gonna have to tell her the ugly bits too. Like, why does he
Mm-hmm.
feel that he abandoned the Horde,
Mm-hmm.
or what happened, to Garrosh, and why does the Horde have all War Chief turn over, or why did he throw Doomhammer away? There's lots of things that could still be addressed, and yeah, I think it would be interesting if there was like a little quest line, maybe in like I don't know 915, that could explore this in more detail.
Mm-hmm.
So
Indeed.
for our
Yeah.
final big lore topic, we wanted to highlight the Dreadlords reveal, which was teased a bit last week in the data mining,
Mm-hmm.
but now we finally have the full story.
Yeah.
So this is the big spoiler one. But in the chapter called The Unseen Guest, we experience the infiltration of the Nathrazim. We learn more about their exile to Azeroth, and we also see what we data mined last week, that Mal'Ganis shows up, and he's a distraction for Sire Denathrius to be freed.
Mm-hmm.
And we learn a little more about what happens, the origin story of the Dreadlords, which is pretty interesting. So last week we were all, why did Sire Denathrius create the Dreadlords when there was the Venthyr? Who was created first? Was one a lesser version of the other?
Mm-hmm. Like, how
And
are they
it
connected?
seemed, yeah, so it seems like Sire Denathrius created the Venthyr, so Prince Renathal was like actually the first, and like maybe that's why there is some like sentimentality where
Yeah.
Denathrius won't kill him. Like he was actually the first. He was
Mm-hmm.
not after the Nathrazim. Um, the Nathrazim were then forged to be spies, and they infiltrated all the realms, including the living. The Light was really upset when they found out about the spying and attacked Revendreth and created the Scorched Area, now known as the Ember Ward.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for whatever reason, Maldraxxus did not decide to aid Revendreth, so the Stone Rite made the Stone Legion to push back the Light, everyone's favorite fight. Um,
Yep.
Meanwhile, Revendreth is still really annoyed by the Nathrazim creating this conflict in the first place for being found out. So Denathrius gives the impression that as a solution, he will exile them to Azeroth as the Dreadlord. So that's the story Prince Renathal was told, that, the Nathrazim were spies and they kind of messed up, and Denathrius realized that and sent them away, and we didn't realize that they were doing all this stuff. But then, as Denathrius is being freed, everyone was just like, oh, we were never in exile, you gullible fool. It was all part of the master's plan. Keep your realm. They are dust in the face of our sire's true ambition. And you're like, oh, this was just like a big setup to, make the Venthyr unsuspicious of the Dreadlords or think they were out of the picture. But meanwhile, it
Mm-hmm.
was like a convenient excuse to make them do stuff on a much bigger scale. So, yeah, very interesting misdirection on Sire Denathrius's part.
Mm-hmm. And
And
again, like you said, very interesting way to finally tie those dots together for us. Because
yeah,
we had these speculations and somewhat conclusions made based on last week, but now we're given more details to be able to directly say like this is how it's connected, and I think that's really cool. And it makes me think back to how Sardonathrius was meant to just be defeated and not an important character. Uh,
yeah,
and now it's like, well, wow. This is pretty
yeah.
big.
It's also interesting being like, so is he going to do something in the future? Like, is
Mm-hmm.
he seems really ambitious. Like, is he serving the jailer or is he like a free agent? Like, all these
Yeah,
dreadlords are like very loyal to him.
exactly.
No
Yeah.
one is, they don't seem loyal to the jailer. They seem loyal to him. Like, it almost, I'm actually just thinking about this. It gives me like Sylvanas and Forsaken vibes that, she like created and championed them and people are like loyal to her, more
Mm-hmm.
so than the War Chief of the Horde. Obviously that's changed, but you know, back in the day it's like, they revered her.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely getting a similar vibe how, or Ashara with the Naga, how
Mm-hmm.
they're loyal to her more so than, more so than the old gods.
And
So I
and
think that's interesting.
and there was a considerable amount of Forsaken that did go with her and left the Horde as well, right? There was a bit of a split there as well.
Yeah,
Um,
the loyalists.
mm-hmm. Um, I'm I'm also thinking, what if this is some kind of beginning to a um, union of Sardonathrius with Sylvanas with us, question mark, because it takes me
Yeah.
back to remembering how the jailer had no interest in saving
Yeah, he
Sardonathrius.
was very cold
Yeah,
about Sire
it's like he's
Denathrius.
done his job, he's done. But then the question is, did he do that because he knew that the dreadlords would take care of it, or is it because he just underestimated Sardonathrius? Like, I think that's also a very interesting point to make there, because I think Denathrius has every right to be kind of mad at him.
Yeah, it also seems that, Denathrius likes the attention and subjects liking him and being at the top.
Mm-hmm.
He secretly rules the Dreadlords while staying in control of Revendreth, which has this, very elaborate gothic atmosphere and, his welcoming castle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I don't, would he want to serve the jailer? Like, it doesn't seem
Yeah, he
to
seems
be in
very proud.
character for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like he's using the jailer and
Mm-hmm.
him, but it definitely seems like he doesn't want to see everything destroyed because he likes his, comforts.
Mm-hmm.
So but yeah, the story ends with Denathrius escaped. And there's a really cool sequence where in the quest line where when you realize the Nathrezim are in your midst, Kale and Vosh are like infiltrating, and you start realizing that a lot of NPCs like the LFR weapon vendor and the innkeeper of Sinfall were dreadlords all along. And there's like the demons are all from past expansions, like the Hunter Bow demons from Vanilla. So it's a very interesting throwback there,
Mm-hmm.
tying it all together even further.
Yeah.
How it's like, oh, interesting, so like when they died on Azeroth, they ended up uh you know reborn in Shadowlands. And it sort of makes you wonder, because we were like, oh yeah, we defeated the Burning Legion, but now it's like, well,
Did we?
did we? It's like
Yeah.
it seems that the like the Dreadlord component is alive and well.
Mm-hmm.
um Also, there's this very interesting line
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. This was an
where
interesting one.
Prince Renethal goes to the Stone Right and says, "My dear Stone Right, harvester of wrath, wielder of Ilu, and then gets cut off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, the obvious interpretation is he was about to say wielder of Elun's something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really interesting because everyone has assumed that, Elun was at first that Elun was just, with the night elves, and then Tauran mythology, and now Elun might be tied to Ardenweald, and the Winter Queen might have a sister that's Elun, and now Revendreth is tied to Elun. Like, it
Yeah,
feels
like
out of
how did
character.
Revendreth fit in? Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because, when we were just talking about the fight between the Light and the Nathrezim and Revendreth, that the Stone Rite made the Stone Legion to fight back against the Lights, and then became very angry at the Nathrezim for, causing losses to her species.
Mm-hmm.
And was the Stone Rite a Night Warrior? Like, did the Stone Rite call upon Elune to become the Night Warrior? Because her name is Harvester of Wrath, and the Night Warrior is like very into vengeance,
Mm-hmm.
anger. Like, is this a ritual that you call upon when you feel that your people are threatened? That's pretty
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Mm-hmm. And that would also potentially connect back to Tyrande as well.
Yeah, because last we saw Tyrande, it seems that she did something badass in an Ardenweald dramatic, but then the powers were too much and she is put to sleep, so her story is still not yet over.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, we learned in 9-0 that the Night Warrior on another realm, was unstable, and, just couldn't wield the magic, and it, ended in tragedy. So
Yep.
if, it could be used in all these realms, and it could also maybe explain how the Winter Queen keeps joking about a sister that she doesn't always get along with, and maybe the Winter Queen did not like Elune helping other realms or being unruly. That could be something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the realms are meant to stay out of helping Revendreth, and, you know, eating the Stone Rite.
Yeah.
So I feel like that will not be resolved in the Sylvanas book or anytime soon. But if
No.
they are moving towards the cosmic forces again, Elune is definitely mysterious and clearly tied to Tyrande, and the whole Teldrassil story has not yet been revealed, including why Elune's powers, waned and couldn't protect them. So I do think that this could be a setup into, maybe 10.0 if we sort out, the realm of death, and then you have all the other forces still fighting, and the Dreadlords, out there causing chaos.
I kind of
So
hope that something gets tied a bit sooner with that because I feel like we spent BFA like kind of waiting for something to happen with Tyrande.
yeah,
And then if her Night Warrior story, and because I feel like it's impossible to talk about the story with Elune and not include Tyrande in it. So it feels kind of sad if we have to wait another expansion to like talk more about it. Um, but it does definitely feel like there's some kind of setup going on here. I mean, we have Tyrande in the Ardenweald storyline, and like you mentioned, Elune was mentioned as a potential sister, and now it potentially ties together with Revendreth, and that's wild. Um,
it
and
also feels like Tehran's story should be addressed sooner than later,
yeah.
because it's not it has it, like it's not the timeline isn't satisfying for many players, and
Mm-hmm.
if you keep delaying it, people might just sort of lose interest. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, she's she has these powers, but then Nathanos and Dalar, and they escape, and her loyal subjects return, and then she defeats Nathanos one on one, but then he's happy and excited that he's going to the afterlife, and then everyone thinks that she's doing a bad job with her Night Warrior powers, And then apparently in 9-1 she needs to be like put into this sleep by Sarah, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so what's her big moment? Because right
Yeah.
now this just be like she's not really getting a solid
It's like keeps getting
win.
postponed. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's always like there was always like another sad unexpected moment for her,
Mm-hmm.
and not a character, not, it feels like she's always sort of taken down, and not a lot of characters have a there's more uplifting moments for it, like, you know, Jaina's whole arc of being imprisoned and being sent to Thros and then being rescued, that was all in one patch. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously Chelder still has a more complicated story, but uh it just feels like a very uneven treatment so far. And like we were saying before with Sylvanas, it feels like when Sylvanas shows up, you know that Blizzard wants to create something confusing when you see her. It's like when you see Tehran shows up, there's always going to be like a catch, or, you know, like this
Yeah.
would have been a happy scene, but, you know, something sad happened to delay it, and like you sort of want the story just proceed naturally.
Mm-hmm. And like this night warrior thing is also like an interesting arc of things, and waiting too long won't make it as fun, I think.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
what's up with that. We have one non-spoiler topic to mention
Yeah.
quickly from last build,
That
and then I
wraps up
think
the
we're
lore.
good on the show. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let me
So
take down the
yeah.
spoiler tag. And yeah, honestly, with all this lore, it would have been awesome if we had been able to discuss it with Novel too to get some more like takes on it. I um, I really love listening when it comes to lore to both Perk and Novel, and then having you guys like on the same show at the same time is always so good.
Oh,
um,
thanks. Yeah,
but
I
it's
know we're trying to get him back on the show. You know, maybe when they add the remaining chapters, that could be a good show to like discuss the whole
oh yeah,
Covenant
for sure.
campaign.
For sure. I mean, scheduling is always like one of the difficult
Yeah.
points, and I think it's hopefully it's still nice for people as well to have like one lore master here, and then I I try to dive in as much as I can as well. But it's always nice to hear the full coverages or like the full picture from you in this. So
Yeah. Well, I
yeah,
think it's important to have different perspectives too. Like, you know, WoW shouldn't be designed for someone that, you know, has the time, or, you know, likes to read every book and, you know, can
mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily, like, you know, WoW should be designed for many people that, and even people that maybe you're playing, you know, for achievements or high end gameplay, or play casually and, you know who Sylvanas is, but, you know, aren't aware that there's a comic where she meets her sister. So
Yeah,
I think it's important to just
that
have
is true.
multiple
Mm-hmm.
perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
in
why I
that
do
case,
try to
I would,
ask my
yeah,
questions to you as well,
yeah.
because I feel like you know when sometimes like people may want to ask something but they're not able to, so because maybe they don't know anyone that they can ask, or maybe they would feel silly to ask. In those moments, I do try to ask you, and hopefully that's helpful
Yeah.
for people who might be a little bit more like casual on keeping up with lore things. So
Yeah. So for our final topic,
mm-hmm.
we knew last year that WoW's upcoming anniversary would have a Doomwalker boss of some sort. We thought it was actually going to come last year, and it did not. But
Yep.
on the PTR, they've added information about it. Um, oh, that's actually very interesting. So, side note, the fact that they added stuff on the 9-1 PTR for a holiday coming in November, to me is interesting, thinking about
Oh.
scheduling, because that's like, oh, you know, are we not getting 9-2 or the next patch before November if they had to put it in now?
Oh no, that's actually such a good point. If they
Yeah.
add it now, that means it's part of 9-1 still.
Right.
So there won't be any 9-2 before November.
Right. Or I mean,
Ooh.
I guess they could have sped this up to tie into TBC hype. Uh But yeah, I
Mm,
just thought of that. How
hmm.
it could mean that it wouldn't be ready by November. So
Okay, I'm gonna live with the fact that they just, they try to do this real quickly to tie in with the Burning Crusade hype. Of course. I mean,
yeah,
we even have a low res mount reward, and that
yep,
is very reminding us of TBC. So,
yeah,
yeah, that's the conclusion. There it is.
yep. Illidari Doomhawk. This was added to the game files ages ago when the blue and red ones were added, and it was never used. I think it was meant to be a PvP reward at first.
Mm-hmm.
So they trotted this out after a really long time, and now it's a very low res mount. And yes, Sylvanas also has a Dragonhawk mount on Mythic, but it is like way more detailed and upscaled. So this isn't like, oh, so cheap Sylvanas mounted. They look very different, and it
Mm-hmm.
shows how much graphics have come since then.
Yeah. Actually, that's that's a
Another
very good comparison to make.
another interesting thing they added is that we have the loot table. Many of these are the drops from the world boss, but in updated for time walking form, so you have to be level 27 or above to equip it.
Mm-hmm.
Many of these are BOE items, so I wonder how that's going to work, because does that mean that, if you loot a BOE as like a level 30, it scales down to the level 30 version, or if you loot it on the level 60,
Mm.
it's a level 60 BOE? I wonder, so I just wonder how that's going to um turn out for people.
Oh, that's an
Thinking of the
interesting
auction
point.
house.
Do we have any BOEs currently that changes the item level
I think that's how the dynamic loot works from
from all the greens in
I
the
think
world, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think it would be like that then. So we'd have some epic loot, which is different levels. That's cool.
There is also an axe, Akama's Edge, which is BOP, and it is a new model. It's the same axe Akama is using, so it's still very old school looking. But it's obviously people are really excited about this for transmog, especially Shaman, because Akama is such a big part of the Burning Crusade,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just a cool axe to have for transmog, and I think especially Draenei players would be excited by this.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And it
So
might be a bit, it might be a little bit like old school, but it doesn't look that off in terms of design.
yeah, and it's like if you're going for that old school character look anyway, it is a pretty distinctive axe.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely better shape than the Dragonhawk.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like if you compare
Yep.
those two, then this one still looks, kind of fitting with today's stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like I think a lot of the TBC tier sets are still considered to be, the best at what they are.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where Blizzard like brought them back for tier 20.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that even if like the armors are evolution, just the fantasy style like really appeals to people. Like it stood the test of time, more so than gear from other expansions. I
Mm-hmm.
like it really tapped into the class fantasy element.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all what we have for news.
Yeah.
Let us know if you have any questions. We've really been trying to pump out PTR news, so if you've been looking at Wowhead, you've been seeing more like opinion pieces on PVE class stuff over the weekends, more like Mythic Plus tips articles. So there's a lot of stuff going on we're not covering in the actual show, but we're trying to do more stuff to appeal to the high end competitive crowd on Wowhead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we try to for Wowhead Weekly focus on the main bits and pieces that could summarize what has recently happened, and we pick the topics that we think is the most interesting for people to hear in a 2 hour ish show. I think we normally run around 2 hours,
Yeah.
and So sometimes that does mean that certain topics aren't talked about. And if you check the Wowhead website itself, you can see all the different articles because there's new things all the time. And there's deep dives as well, you know, into every class, every spec, every type of gameplay as well. So yeah, if there's anything that you found interesting, you can always find it as a link in the article for this show. And if there's something that you'd like to see more of on this show, feel free to give us that feedback as well. And yeah, that's the way that we try to go about with running the show.
Yeah. So I think that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, as a reminder, when we mentioned the Ian interview, there's going to be a Q&A stream with Preach and Ian tomorrow. I know we keep being like, oh
Oh,
yeah, we need to do more streams, or like, why
I
was this
didn't know
Chinese
that.
late? But yeah, that's coming tomorrow, and we'll see how it goes. But I think that's definitely a step in the right direction
Mm-hmm.
as far as more rapid community back and forth, and will definitely give us something to talk about next week, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely looking forward to that coverage. That's going to be fun.
Yeah.
But that is it for this week. Before we head off, I want to quickly give a shout out to Alina Marina for the 8-month resub here on Twitch and Bop Zapper for the Prime sub as well. Thank you guys for supporting during the show. And is it time for a high five?
I think so. I'm seeing if Brightpaw is nearby, but I don't see him in the room. So
Oh, it's usually Luna here, but today it's Maya sleeping. My
yeah, I
cats were
think
going crazy earlier today. They were like chasing each other and like punching each other. But
I
it
think we
seems
had
like
a
now
really
they're
good
tired.
intro with Brightpaw, though, how we like
That was
ended
really
from
cute.
the top of the chair.
Yeah,
So
that was really cute.
yeah, he put in his appearance. He needs a nap now.
Indeed.
But yeah, I think we're good to do the high five.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay.
Yeah. So 3, 2, 1.
Way, high five.
Yay!
Thank you guys very, very
Yeah.
much for watching, and we'll see you again next week, same time.
Yep.
Covering
Bye.
everything from now until then. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.
And as usual, in case you're watching the stream right now and you don't know, these all go on YouTube. So if you miss something or if you want something to listen to while you're, I don't know, cleaning your house or something, you can always have us in the background. Sometimes when there's new patches, it can be difficult as you'll miss a lot of the visual things. But for the most part, we do talk about a lot of things. So yeah, just a decent sort of background noise to keep up with things while you're still getting stuff done. So yeah. That's it.
Yeah. See you guys next week.
Yep.
Bye.
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 Yeah, you can clean during spoiler tags, true.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone. See you tomorrow. Not tomorrow, next week. Bye.